Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity to talk to everybody about the Reading for Wellbeing project. I will try and keep it at just 20 minutes, but I could talk about this for a really long time. Just to give a little bit of background, so I am a community reading facilitator for Durham County Council on the Reading for Wellbeing project, but I'm also an academic liaison librarian at the University of Sunderland. So I do the two jobs side by side. So Reading for Wellbeing in County Durham is currently in a pilot year. We started the project on the 1st of November in 2021, and we're currently running up to the 31st of October 2022, although obviously we've got everything crossed that might be extended. It's a really interesting project. It's something quite unique that hasn't been done in this way before. So for me, it was a really exciting opportunity to get involved in how we can promote reading as a tool for wellbeing widely. I think especially given sort of the backdrop of the pandemic and other areas as well, it's more important than ever that people have ways of improving their wellbeing, things that are accessible to everyone, and also healthy ways that they can take their mind off any problems that they might have. Reading's one of the best ways to do that. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, so I've got a lovely photo there of Ann Cleeves. So the Reading for Wellbeing project was really, it's Ann Cleeves's, she conceived the whole idea, and at a conference in 2019, she was speaking to a group of health professionals about reading for wellbeing and using kind of books and reading to improve wellbeing across the board. And she challenged the local authorities at this conference that if she put the money in to fund 2 project workers, would they match that and employ some project workers? Her idea was that this was something that could just give back, really. She was hoping that it would be something that would kickstart reading for wellbeing, and it was something that people, if the local authorities could get on board, then obviously it would be kind of running through libraries and public health, and that was what she really hoped to do. Her challenge was accepted, so what we currently have is 7 project workers across 5 local authorities. Now we're all working for the Reading for Wellbeing project, but the project runs very differently in those different authorities. So the authorities currently running are County Durham, which is where I am, Northumberland, Teesside, Gateshead, and sorry, I've gone blank on the 5th one. There's 5 local authorities, and the project's running slightly differently across all of them. We're all basically doing the same kind of core things in terms of working with communities, but what we found in different areas is that different communities and different authorities wanted to run in slightly different ways. So in Durham, we're working very much really closely with the public libraries. In Gateshead, for example, they're working really closely with the social prescribing link workers, and they are taking referrals for people that will engage with the project. I'm really going to talk a lot more about how we're running it in Durham, because obviously that's what I know the best. Ann Cleeves has been a real incredible supporter. She's such a passionate supporter of libraries. She was a librarian in residence in Kirklees a few years back, so she really wanted this to run sort of closely with the libraries, encouraging people to use the libraries, although it is a little bit separate, and also put her own money in to fund some training for us. That training was facilitated by Opening the Book, who I know do a lot of training through public libraries, and they've created some bespoke training that we've all the facilitators have done, just about engaging people with talking about their reading. It's a different focus for me as I've worked in libraries for 20 years, but this is a different sort of focus, because you're not talking about you're not talking to people about their literacy, and you're not talking to them about their kind of you're not trying to promote any specific books or sets of books. This is very much talking to people about themselves and their own lives and their own circumstances, and what it is that they would like to get out of reading, or ways that we think that reading could help them. The project's been evaluated by Newcastle University, so the team of researchers who are taking the evidence that we provide and putting that together, and we're hoping that's going to build a case for extending the project beyond the end of October. Next slide, please. Thank you. So thinking about reading and why it's important for wellbeing, I'm sure this is very familiar to everyone, but I've just got a couple of examples there of some of the research that's been done about why reading, why that's been chosen for something like this. Studies have found that reading has a real social impact. So people who are better able to read are developing their empathy skills. They're better at reading social cues than people who don't read. They can understand other people's feelings and situations. Helps readers to process situations. So it's leading to increased social intelligence, all those kind of things. So that has an impact on certainly the people that I'm working with. I'm based in Stanley, so it's quite there's areas of real deprivation in Stanley, and there's areas where people really do need support in all aspects of their life. So anything like this that can help people just to be a little bit more social. We've got quite a lot of people who've engaged with the project who don't leave the house very regularly. And what I've found is they'll kind of come along to one of the sessions that they're doing with me, and they'll chat to people about what they're reading. It's also provided a bit of a stepping stone so that it gives people something that they can chat about, something that can talk to other people about what they've been reading. People who've got things in common can then kind of chat together about the different books. They can recommend books to each other and things like that. We're not looking at working with people to develop their literacy. Obviously, we would hope that the more they read, that their literacy will improve, but that's not really what we are for. It's more about just reading for pleasure and how that can help. One reason that Ann Cleeves really wanted to push the idea that this is reading for well-being as opposed to reading to improve your literacy or meet a target was that she found her husband, late husband, was very ill for a period of years, and she found that he was in and out of hospital a lot, but he found reading to be something really, really calming. Anne was already a reader. Obviously, she was already a published author. She'd been a reader for many, many years, but she saw the impact it had on her husband. So when things were really difficult for him and there was a lot of information to process and there was a lot going on, he would take a book and it would really just completely take him out of that situation that he was in. And she saw that how that helped him. She also relied on reading heavily herself. Again, that idea of just a little bit of an escape, that idea that it can just kind of take you out of your circumstances and provide something else for you to think about for a little bit of time, really, really helped her as well during that difficult time. She was very clear when she kind of kickstarted this project. She was very clear that it was about reading for well-being based on what people would like to read. So we're not pushing, we don't have like reading lists, we're not pushing particular types of books. There's similarities here with something called Books on Prescription that ran in the public libraries a few years ago. The difference between what we are doing and Books on Prescription is that Books on Prescription, it was suggested to people that they come into the libraries and take some books. Generally, those books would be about their condition. So they'd be coming in and looking at books on anxiety or books on depression, books on chronic pain, that kind of thing. But it required those people to kind of come into the library and get those books and check them out. So people who weren't confident about using libraries, it didn't really reach those people. And it was also, they were then reading about their condition. And again, the difference with this is it's very much about reading for pleasure and reading something that you'll enjoy. So it doesn't necessarily have to be anything to do with any condition or your medical problem or mental health issue, anything like that you might have. You're just reading a story or something that you'll really, really enjoy, just to provide the benefits of that reading for pleasure without any of that stigma that Books on Prescription kind of stumbled with a little bit. Okay, next slide, please. So thinking about the way this project's been evaluated, I mentioned that we've got a team at Newcastle University who we're working with. So what we do is at the beginning of every sort of block of sessions, so when we kind of meet people for the first time and we're just chatting to them about whether they'd like to engage with the project, there's an evaluation form that they fill in right at the beginning. They are evaluating their own well-being as part of this evaluation form, so they're kind of talking they're asked a little bit about generally how positive they feel about things. Do they have any problems concentrating? Do they feel they've got any kind of hobbies or interests, anything like that? And they self-evaluate where they're at. The idea then is that they fill in these forms again. We can kind of choose the best time to do this, but sometimes maybe once a month, every couple of weeks, something like that. And again, just self-evaluate how their well-being's improving. And hopefully that'll show that when they've engaged with our Reading for Wellbeing project and had that support to build up their reading habit, then they'll be able to kind of see themselves that there's those little improvements with their well-being. The forms can be totally anonymous. All that we ask is they need to put some name on it. It doesn't have to be their real name. They can use a pseudonym or a code, anything like that, as long as we can track their responses over a period of time. What we found in practice with the evaluation is some people are a little bit reluctant. Often the people that we're working with, and they're in vulnerable situations, they're often engaged with other agencies as well, that can be really reluctant if you sort of pull out an evaluation form and ask them to fill it in. But generally, I would say probably over 90% of participants are really happy to fill the form in. And certainly I'm working with a lot of people who are really getting a lot out of the participation and really enjoying it. So they're then really happy to fill the next evaluation form in, because they feel quite excited themselves, because they can see themselves that there's an improvement in their general well-being the more that they're reading. Sometimes this is people who are coming back to reading after a period of time where they haven't really engaged with books at all. And occasionally it's people who've never really had much of a reading habit but quite wanted to give it a go. They're quite excited, so they're more keen than I thought they would be, to be honest, to come back and fill the form in and kind of document how they're feeling better and how it's helping them in their life. Okay, so in County Durham we've got two community reading facilitators. There's me in Stanley and there's my colleague Hazel Sheiky-Bird, and she's working in Tow Law. So we initially started with two different focuses. I was focused on adults and Hazel was focused on working with families. What we found, sort of six and a half months in now, and what we found is that we've had to tweak that slightly, because what I was finding working with adults is that a lot of adults, when you are talking to adults about their reading, naturally what comes into that is their children. So do they read with their children? Do their children like to read? And often just the community groups that I've gone to speak to those adults, the children are there as well. So it's just kind of very naturally morphed into working with families as well. Hazel's had a similar situation, and her focus was families, but occasionally people have come up to her who don't have a family, there's no children in the house, but they're quite interested in working with the project. So we've just kind of tweaked that as we've gone along and changed our focus slightly. So I've got on the screen there, that's just kind of an idea of the kind of things that we're doing and the kind of sessions we're doing. Because it's a pilot year, it's very much that we're just going into these groups and meeting people, and it's evolving quite naturally into what they want. So we had initially been asked about setting up reading groups, but what we found is that in very specific situations, reading groups work quite well. So Hazel's working in a supported housing complex, and in that situation, a reading group's great because they can come out with their flat. Hazel can easily drop the books off. They can come out with their flat into the community room and sit and chat for an hour about what they've all read, and that works really well. Other situations, it doesn't work quite so well. People are a little bit reluctant because they feel quite pressured by a reading group. They feel like they're going to have to read something they don't like, or they're going to have to read a lot, and that's a lot of pressure. So that we've kind of pulled back a little bit on that. But you can see on the screen from the examples, we're doing really quite different things. A lot of this job is really drinking cups of tea and chatting to people and getting to know them. I've found that you've got to put that work in and build their trust up a little bit, because if you sort of come in and just say, oh, I've come with a box of books and, chat about books, people are quite reluctant. There's a lot of nervousness when you're asking people to open up about their reading habits. Some people feel quite embarrassed that they don't read, or they're a little bit defensive about it for different reasons. So there's a lot of it's a very gentle, softly approach to get people to understand that you're not there to put any pressure on them. You're not going to be expecting they're going to read some like doorstop book in 2 weeks. It's very much just chatting about what they like. And what I've found is that when you chat to people just generally about their life and what they enjoy doing, I can then use that and use my sort of skills and experience from many years in libraries to find books that I can suggest. So for example, if someone, somebody really enjoys gardening, then the next time I go along to that community group, or the next time I see them, I might have a little stack of books about gardening, which they'll then pick up and flick through. And that's worked really, really well. Like I mentioned before, we're not looking at reading lists, so we don't have kind of a set list of you should read these books. Here's 10 books we think you should read. It's very, very individual, which is again what makes it very different to other projects. People can just kind of give us some ideas about the things that they're interested in, things they enjoy doing, and we'll find some books. We've managed to sign up quite a few people to the public library, which is great, but that's really a sideline. The goals for this project are just people reading and feeling better about their lives generally, maybe coping a little bit better with situations that they're in. That's the goal. We're not looking to kind of, get people signed up to the library, but a lot of people want to, which has been great. Next slide, please. So I've got a list here. This is just to give you an idea of the different kind of groups that we're going along to. What Hazel and I have found is it's been, and this is partly because we started the job in November, so by the time we were ready to really get out there with people, we were hitting Christmas. And it was really difficult to get anyone engaged and wanting to set anything up at Christmas. Also, obviously, with COVID, a lot of the community groups weren't meeting in person through December or January. So that's hindered us a little bit. But what we found is just making connections in the community and just identifying groups where we think we've got something that we can offer. I'm also finding in Stanley, it's very much word of mouth. So I've done a couple of sessions, people who are running other community groups, or a lady who runs a community centre in Stanley heard about what we were doing, and then people are now starting to approach me to suggest, is there any chance you could come along? I do this group on a Tuesday morning, I think they'd love this. Is there any chance you can come along? And it's building that way. We've got quite a wide range of things there. You can see Hazel does some drop-ins at the Tow Law Food Bank. That's worked really well, but again, just being a presence. She was there for about 3 or 4 weeks before anybody was that, very keen to come along and chat, but just being a presence. I've done a similar sort of thing. So I've got their Packed House community organisation. They do a community meal on a Wednesday. So I turned up there just with a box of books and a little poster. And again, just kind of very low key, just sat. People sort of wandered over, asked what you're doing. And now that's working really well. People come along and they have their meal, and then they'll take a book from me. They'll have it for a couple of weeks. They'll come, they'll bring it back. They'll fill me evaluation form in, and it's working really well. It's very accessible because people don't have to go into the library to access it. They don't have to do anything different. It's kind of the books are where they are going to be, which makes it work much better. And we've got a few sessions. I'm starting an after school family reading club next week. So that's being promoted with the primary schools in Stanley. And we're hoping to get some parent and child sort of pairs along there, and they can come in and just read with their own child, but it's in a supportive environment. So I'll provide the books, I'll be on hand if they need any help with that. And then hopefully we can engage some of the parents there as well to take some books for themselves and, work on their own reading habit. Next slide, please. Thank you. So challenges, I've touched on a couple of these as I've been going through. There have been quite a lot of challenges, some that I was expecting and some that have been a bit more of a surprise. There's been a lack of understanding about what it is that we're actually doing. So we've had, we were hoping to work with the social prescribing link workers. The idea was they could refer people to us that they thought would benefit from reading a bit more, certainly people that would need help with them improving their well-being. But then we're only allowed, because our contract and the funding and everything else, we're only allowed to work with people in those 2 areas of Stanley and Tow Law. We can't offer this service right across County Durham. There's 2 of us and we both work 2.5 days, so it's not possible. So that's been a bit difficult. It's really frustrating having to say no, because we know that the need for this kind of service is there absolutely, and we could roll this out across the whole of County Durham, and we'd probably have hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were interested, but we've just had to stick to those 2 areas. there's also been, again, just through kind of low-key conversations with people about libraries, some people are very reluctant to use libraries. That's been really interesting to me, obviously, as a library professional of, you know, of many years. It's interesting to me to chat to people about why do they not like libraries, why they're not comfortable going into the library. The beauty, again, of this project is they don't have to. So they're using library stock, and it's almost like engaging them with libraries by stealth in a way, because you can then kind of outline to them that they could be doing this for themselves. They could be going in and choosing their own books, but you've got to do that quite gently. We're kind of in a bridging role really between communities and libraries. Next slide, please. Thank you. So celebrating the wins. This is something that we've really tried to do a lot of, and this is really where for me, this is the job satisfaction is just off the scale. We have had some fantastic little wins, so I'm just going to run through. I'm really conscious of the time, so I'm just going to run through a couple that we've had that have been really, really successful. So Hazel's had a man who lives in a sheltered housing complex. He doesn't leave his flat. She knocked on the door to give him a flyer for the book group, and opened the door and, oh, you know, it says, do you want to come in? So she went in to chat to him. And he was actually, at that time, he was reading a book about loneliness because he just felt so isolated. And she sort of got chatting to him. He's joined the book group. Now he comes along to the book group. He's really engaged in, I think she's got him looking at eBooks on his tablet and things like that. And it's just made such a difference to his daily life. Obviously, all we can do is provide books. We can't take problems away, and we can't really in any radical way change circumstances, but we can certainly help people to feel better just on that day-to-day experience. That man is a real success story in Tow Law. A couple that I've had is a lady who had no interest in reading. She, you know, polite every time I saw her, but she had no interest in using the library or engaging with us at all. It wasn't for her. She does love knitting, so I took her a couple of fiction books about knitting groups and asked, you know, would she like to give them a try? She came back the next week saying, "Oh, it's not for me. I can't hold the book. It's too uncomfortable. I'm trying to read in bed. I've tried propping up on a cushion. It's not for me." So we had a chat about audiobooks, and now she is getting through 3 or 4 audiobooks in a week, and she's recommending them to other people, and she's really, again, just noticing that little improvement. So she doesn't sleep very well when she's up at night. Instead of just watching rubbish on the telly, she just puts her headphones on and listens to our book for a little while, and finds that is, you know, like a calming thing to do during the night while she's knitting and crafting. She's got an audiobook on in the background. She's really enjoying that. I met her at a mental health support group, so it's certainly something that's really generally just improving her well-being across the week. She's finding that she's recommending books to other people. She's engaged another 2 people at that group who weren't very keen, or just thought it wasn't for them. She's engaged them with audiobooks as well. They've all signed up and joined BorrowBox and really into the audiobooks. And the last one is a gentleman who is widowed within the last few years, just very lonely and sort of a bit bored during the evenings. He told me that he loved poetry. Could I find any poetry books? So I took an anthology, and he started flicking through, and I handed it to him, and he got really emotional because he's in his 80s. He doesn't have a very good memory, and he said that looking at these poems, he used to be an English teacher and he remembered some of the poems. So he said he felt like, what he said to me was his daughter would be ringing him at tea time, and she'd ask him what he'd had for his tea, and he wouldn't be able to tell her, but he'd managed to just go kind of back in his memory and remember a few lines of these poems. And he found that dipping in and out of that anthology over the next sort of couple of weeks, he found that just lovely to do at night. And he said it just made his evenings go a little bit faster and just be a little bit less miserable, because he had this book there just to sort of dip in and out of. And again, that for me, that's absolutely the wins of this project, and that's what it's about. It's very satisfying to be able to link people up with reading and books and having those kind of results. Next slide, please. Okay. That was the last one. Thank you for listening. I apologize about stumbling at the beginning. I don't know why I was nervous today, because I've done this kind of thing before, but I just nerves got the better of me that first couple of minutes.
That was great, Helen. Thank you very much. Now we've got 2 minutes for questions, but I didn't want to stop you because there were some really, really interesting stories there at the end, which I think sort of shows the value of what you're doing. So there was one from Anne who was just wondering who or which school or department are evaluating the project at Newcastle University.
I don't know. It's I can't remember exactly. It's really just, it's a person that we've been emailing. I think they've got a project team drawn in from a couple of different areas. I could when I finish this in the break, I'll have a check and I can pop that in the chat later on. But we don't really have, so far we haven't done a lot with the evaluation team. We just send the forms off. We haven't had the feedback yet.
Okay, thank you. And then also just want to get this one in, which is from Amina. She says, do you know about borderline books? She says, we give free books to people without the means to buy them. We've been giving books to the Gateshead group doing Reading for Wellbeing, and we'd be happy to do the same for you. And she's put a link to an email. So presumably you do know, but...
That I just, not a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to Christina on the Gateshead project and she mentioned about it. So it's on a list of things to look at, is whether that was something we could access in Durham or whether there was something similar. So that's really useful. Thank you very much. Okay. I'll definitely be in touch.
And I had a question, but I'm not going to ask it because it's now 13:35, so I've got to move on. But there were, I think, a few other questions as well. So perhaps if we've got time, we might come back to them at the end, or perhaps if not, then if there are people who've got really pressing questions, they might be able to get in touch with you afterwards and
absolutely, yeah, I'm more than happy. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That was great.